Freeze dryers can be a valuable tool for preserving food, but they're also very expensive. And today we're going to talk with Emily, who's 87 years old and just purchased a freeze dryer. How long ago?
October,
In October, and now it's January. So we want to have a really frank discussion about whether or not that was a good decision. Hey Provident Preppers, I'm Kylene and this is my mother-in-law, Emily. And Emily is an incredibly active 87-year-old woman who recently decided to buy a freeze dryer. And you went back and forth for quite a while.
Well, I did because you were so kind as to freeze dry things for me.
And I think what happened is she got tired of waiting for my freeze dryer to be empty so that she could do it anytime she wanted. The purpose of today's video is to really look at freeze drying and decide whether or not it's something that might be right for you or maybe not right for you. So we're just gonna talk about it with Emily. And it all started with the raspberries because she grows the most amazing raspberries. Tell me what the difference was between freeze drying the raspberries and, because usually you make tons of jam.
But you can only eat so much jam and give away so much jam. And I really wanted to preserve some raspberries and I bottled them too, but we just didn't eat them.
So how do you feel about the freeze dried raspberries? What's different about them?
Oh, they're just so delicious and crunchy, and they're sweet, like berries are sweet, but they don't have any sugar in them, and I will eat those.
Yeah. And that's what I found about snacking on freeze-dried foods. Like I can snack on freeze-dried fruits and vegetables, and it's very satisfying. It's like, I don't know if it's the crunch or what, but it doesn't have the extra sugars and preservatives and all that. So that's one of the things that I really like about freeze drying. Considering that you're 87 years old, the thought about freeze drying food must be a little bit daunting for you. So you had purchased the medium, right? The
Yes.
Harvest Right medium freeze dryer?
Yes, and I like that size. I think it's the right size for me.
And the trays aren't too heavy.
No.
Right? And it's kind of manageable.
It is manageable.
I know that you were a little bit worried about changing the oil.
I was.
Okay, how do you feel about changing the oil now?
I feel like it was pretty easy, but I'll probably ask John down just to look over my shoulder the next time.
And that's good. I mean, I wish everybody had a Johnny, but he's mine. And so he's around to be able to help, and he handles the things with our freeze dryers. And so this, because it's the medium, it didn't need a special plug. Now you used to have a bookcase set up here.
Yes.
So you kind of revamped all this so that you have a table here to work with and made it all so that it was super easy. How difficult is it for you to freeze dry stuff?
It's really pretty easy because I have the equipment I need here. I found this stand on the side of the road with free on it, and it's just worked perfectly because I can keep stuff in it and the freeze dryer fits on it. It's just been nice because I love cheese. You know, you just can't keep cheese that long. You can freeze it, but you can't freeze it forever. And it's just so nice to know that I have cheese that's going to keep until I want it.
And I didn't notice at our family Christmas party, there was an extra ham left over. And normally you would never send a whole ham home with a single 87-year-old woman to eat, right? But you totally took the ham. Now tell me what you did with that ham.
This is some of it. These are some ham bits that I freeze dried, and I have some eggs. I'm going to do more eggs, but I will be able to have ham and egg for breakfast if things get tougher for whatever reason.
So that aspect of freeze drying is really good. The end product is good.
It is.
It's nice and light. You've worked with being able to do some totes and store it. What are the bad things that you've discovered about freeze drying? What would you warn if there was another elderly woman out there that was thinking about doing this on her own? What would you warn her about?
I don't know. I've had such good success. The only thing I have had a little problem with is I saw your molds, or the silicone molds, and I wanted some. Our pear tree outdid itself this year. I had lots of pears and I had apples, and so I made applesauce and pear sauce. And I went and bought a package of molds. And I was so disappointed when I got home and I found out there were only 4 molds. So I should have been more careful Because when I was doing my pear sauce and applesauce, I filled the molds, 4 molds, and then I poured the applesauce into just a tray for the 5th tray. But I had trouble getting that dry. And sometimes I would just take out the parts that didn't dry and use it immediately. That's probably the only thing that hasn't worked perfectly.
And we should probably talk about that for just a second. So there are Harvest Right makes freeze dryers, right? This happens to be a Harvest Right. The Cube is also out there. But one of the things that's happening with freeze dryers is every year they get better and better. And so this is one of the latest models from Harvest Right. And it used to only have 4 trays. My medium only had 4 trays in it, but now hers has 5. And so that's probably why the silicone trays, you bought a package of 4, which was intended for the old one instead of for the new one. But they are seriously making just great strides in perfecting freeze drying. And freeze drying is kind of like buying a car, not a refrigerator. Your refrigerator doesn't need maintenance. You just open the door, it keeps your food cold. And so if we think of a freeze dryer like a refrigerator, you're going to be disappointed because like this one, you do need to change the oil every 25 batches, which it's not a big deal. And because there's a vacuum pump, things are going to fail. And so you'll kind of need to just make sure you have that mindset. It's going to need maintenance and it's going to end up needing repairs. Now you have this down in your basement. Have you had any problems with the noise that the freeze dryer creates or the heat?
The noise, I got used to that, but I can close my basement door and then I don't really hear it, which sometimes isn't good because then I don't know if it's done or not. But it hasn't been bad.
Yeah, that's one of the things. I know there's some people who have them in the kitchen, but that would be way too much noise for me.
Yeah, I think it would be for me too.
It's kind of loud. So ours are actually in our garage right outside of my kitchen door, which is a perfect fit for us. Okay, Emily, thank you for sharing with us today. But very candidly, anybody who's thinking about purchasing a freeze dryer, what advice would you have for them?
It is quite an investment, but I think that it will be a good investment for me, but I think you'd have to think about it. When I was trying to decide, I thought, you know, with the money that I spent for this, I could have bought some freeze-dried cheese and meat, but then I don't know, I just wanted to have it here and do what I wanted. I don't know whether that's helpful, but it is just really nice to have it here, and it just takes a few minutes to load it and unload it.
One of my favorite things about freeze drying is that I can freeze dry leftovers. And what we can do is you just put them in a Ziploc bag, kind of squish it down flat, stick it in the freezer, and then when I have enough of those bags of leftovers, I'll open the bags, put it on the trays, and put it in here. And then I've got a whole bunch of leftovers that were super good to start with, and yet now they're instant meals. And I do like that. But freeze drying isn't for everyone, and you do not have to have a freeze dryer to be able to preserve your own food or to be able to prepare for emergencies, because Emalie is a great example of having bottled and dehydrated and preserved food for 87 years without a freeze dryer. So just don't feel like it's something you have to have, but man, is it a really fun tool that can create wonderful foods that have a really long shelf life. So now, for the question of the day, if you could have a freeze dryer, what is the #1 food that you would like to freeze dry? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution. And by the way, chocolate doesn't freeze dry, so don't mention chocolate.